HOA Karen's sneer could curdle milk, and her voice carried the kind of venom that made you want to check your shoes for snakes. She stood in the middle of my campsite, arms crossed over her bulky frame, acting like she owned the dirt we were all standing on. The truth was, she didn't own a thing not legally. Anyway, but I was about to remind her of that in the most satisfying way possible. It was a crisp autumn evening at Pinewood Lake, the kind where the air smells like pine needles and regret. I'd been coming to this campsite for years, a quiet escape from the city's noise, where I could pitch my tent, grill some burgers, and pretend the world wasn't a mess. This time, though, I wasn't alone. A group of 4 had shown up, loud and obnoxious, claiming they'd rented the spot through HOA Karen, who apparently fancied herself the unofficial queen of Pinewood's leasing scene. The problem? I'd already paid for the site through the park's official system, and I had the receipts to prove it. HOA Karen waddled into the campsite around 7 p.m., her flip-flops slapping the ground like she was auditioning for a one-woman parade. She was a walking caricature of entitlement, 300 pounds of self-righteous fury wrapped in a neon tracksuit that screamed, "I'm here to ruin your day." Her guests, a trio of rowdy 20-somethings named Jake, Mia, and Tyler, had already turned my peaceful retreat into a landfill. Empty beer cans littered the ground, my tent's front flap was ripped, and someone had used my cooler as a makeshift chair, leaving it dented and leaking melted ice. "You're trespassing," HOA Karen barked, pointing a manicured finger at me like I was the one who'd trashed the place. "This is my campsite, and these are my renters. Pack up your junk and get out before I call the cops." I blinked, stunned by the audacity. "Your renters?" I said, gesturing to the mess. "They tore up my tent, scattered my gear, and you're calling me the problem?" Her eyes narrowed, and she puffed out her chest like a territorial goose. "Don't test me, kid. I've been running this place for years. You don't know who you're messing with." "Oh, but I did." See, HOA Karen wasn't just a loudmouth with a bad attitude, she was a con artist. For months, she'd been subletting campsites she didn't own, pocketing cash from unsuspecting renters while the park rangers were none the wiser. I'd stumbled onto her scheme by accident a few weeks back when I overheard her bragging at a local diner about easy money from idiots who don't check the fine print. Curious, I'd done some digging and found a copy of her so-called lease agreement in a public records request. It was a fake, a flimsy piece of paper that wouldn't hold up in a kindergarten court, let alone a real one. I kept it in my backpack, just in case. Now, just in case was staring me in the face, and it was wearing a tracksuit. Jake, one of HOA Karen's renters, piped up, his face red from either beer or embarrassment. "Look, man, we paid her $200 for this spot. She said it was legit." "Yeah," Mia chimed in, looking uneasy. "She showed us a contract and everything." I almost laughed. "A contract? Let me guess, it had her name in Comic Sans and a clip art watermark." Tyler, the third renter, scowled. "What's your deal, dude? You're the one squatting here." HOA Karen smirked, clearly enjoying the chaos. "You heard them. Pay up or get out. I'm calling the cops." She pulled out her phone, her fingers moving with the confidence of someone who'd done this before. That's when I decided it was time to flip the script. "Go ahead, call them," I said, crossing my arms. "But you might want to take a look at this first." I reached into my backpack and pulled out the folded lease agreement, its edges worn from being handled during my late-night research sessions. I held it up, letting the firelight catch the text. "This is your contract, right? The one you've been using to scam people?" Her face froze, the smirk sliding off like grease on a skillet. "Where did you get that?" she snapped, her voice cracking just enough to betray her panic. "Public records," I said, stepping closer. "You didn't think anyone would check, did you? This lease is fake. HOA, you don't own this campsite. You don't own any campsite. You've been ripping people off, and I've got the proof." The renters turned to her, their expressions shifting from confusion to anger. Jake took a step forward, his fists clenched. "Is that true? You took our money for a scam?" HOA Karen sputtered, her face turning a shade of red that matched the campfire. That's not true. He's lying." He's just some nobody trying to cause trouble. Then let's let the cops decide, I said, pulling out my own phone. I've got the park ranger's number on speed dial. They'd love to hear about your little side hustle. The air grew thick with tension. Mia grabbed her backpack, muttering about getting her money back. Tyler kicked a beer can into the dirt, cursing under his breath. Jake, meanwhile, looked like he was ready to throw hands, his glare fixed on HOA Karen. You can't do this, she shrieked, her voice echoing across the lake. I'll sue you. I'll ruin you. I laughed, a sharp, bitter sound. Sue me? With what? Your fake lease and your bad attitude? Good luck. The campers were done. Jake stormed over to HOA Karen, demanding a refund. Mia started gathering their gear, muttering about how they should have known better. Tyler just stood there, shaking his head, as if he couldn't believe he'd fallen for her scam. HOA Karen tried to double down, shouting about her rights and how she'd been disrespected. But the more she talked, the weaker her words sounded. The truth was out, and it was heavier than she was. I dialed the ranger's number, and within minutes, a patrol car rolled into the campsite, its lights cutting through the dusk. The ranger, a no-nonsense woman named Officer Ruiz, stepped out and took one look at the scene. What's going on here? She asked, her voice calm but firm. HOA Karen launched into a tirade, pointing at me, the renters, and even the trash tent like it was evidence of her innocence. I let her ramble, then handed Officer Ruiz the fake lease agreement. She's been subletting campsites she doesn't own, I said. This is her contract. I checked with the county, it's not registered anywhere. Ruiz skimmed the document, her brow furrowing. She turned to HOA Karen, who was now sweating through her tracksuit. Ma'am, do you have any proof of ownership for this campsite? You don't have it on me, HOA Karen stammered. It's at home. This is all a misunderstanding. The renters chimed in, their voices overlapping with accusations. Jake held up his phone, showing a Venmo transaction for $200 sent to HOA Karen. Mia pulled out a printed email from HOA promising them exclusive access to the site. Tyler just shook his head again, muttering, unbelievable. Officer Ruiz didn't need to hear much more. She took HOA Karen aside. Her tone clipped as she asked for ID and started running a check. I overheard her radioing for backup, mentioning possible fraud. The renters, now fully on my side, started cleaning up the mess they'd made, apologizing profusely. I waved it off, they'd been duped, just like I could have been. As the second patrol car arrived, HOA Karen's bravado crumbled. She tried to waddle away, claiming she needed to check something in her car, but Ruiz wasn't having it. Ma'am, you're not going anywhere until we sort this out, she said, her hand resting on her belt. The truth hit HOA Karen like a freight train. Her scam was unraveling, and there was no way out. The renters got their refund processed through the ranger's office, and I was promised compensation for my damaged tent. HOA Karen, meanwhile, was escorted to the patrol car, her head bowed, her flip-flops dragging in the dirt. I almost felt sorry for her almost. But then I remembered the smug look on her face when she thought she'd won, and any pity I had evaporated. As the patrol cars pulled away, Jake walked over, his hand outstretched. Man, I'm sorry we trashed your stuff. We had no idea she was a crook. Forget it, I said, shaking his hand. You didn't know? Just maybe check the fine print next time. Mia chuckled, slinging her backpack over her shoulder. Yeah, no more sketchy campsite deals for us. Tyler gave a sheepish nod. Thanks for standing up to her. That was badass. I shrugged, but inside, I felt a quiet satisfaction. HOA Karen had thought she could bully her way through life, scamming people and leaving chaos in her wake. But tonight, the truth had caught up with her, and it wasn't letting go. The campfire crackled as the renters packed up and left, their apologies lingering in the air. I sat by my ruined tent, staring at the stars reflected on Pinewood Lake. The night was quiet again, the way it was supposed to be. I pulled out my phone and typed a quick note to myself. Always keep the receipts. HOA Karen's reign of terror was over, and Pinewood Lake was a little safer for it. Sometimes, Justice doesn't need a courtroom, just a piece of paper and the courage to call out a bully. The end.